So we're gonna jump right in. I will warn you, this is going to be a really emotional video. It talks about my work for sure, but also my life and a little bit about my autobiography. I have quite the crew here as a support system. I've got my girl Sadie, who you know. I've got Jordi, you met before. Becca's here with her lightning. And I have another little buddy. Oh, settle down. This is Peanut. You're gonna laugh. He's our guard dog. Say hi to the people, Peanut. He's not going to. He's our guard dog. Basically, if a passerby by the house farts, he yells about it. So he keeps everybody alert. Okay, so I am now going to show you a picture of my desk right now. We're gonna look at a couple of things. First of all, this was a gift from my kids, Christmas 2019. It's a small little steel thing, maybe the size of the inside of my palm. My children thought I needed to have this on me at all times. Opens like this, extends like this, and I have a shot glass. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why does he need a shot glass carried around on him at all times? You're looking down on me now. You think I'm an alcoholic. I'm not. Although I'm convinced my kids might think I am, because same year they got me a flask. Not a little flask either. They got me the big one. So don't know exactly how to take that. So I also have this. You're gonna hate this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Okay. This is a chime I use every time I finish a book. Every time I finish a book, I let that go. It's the thing I do before I have my wife come down and read the rest of the book. It's more of a way of cleansing the writing from my head. When I do that, when I chime that bell, I don't feel necessary to go back and clean things up or go back and make edits right away. When I hear that chime, it means the book is done for now. And then one more. I will show you one of my 3 coasters. It's a block of wood. I got this from a guy at VisionCon. He's a really gifted craftsman, and the thing that's so cool about this is this little black design you see here is from, he puts electrodes down on the corners and then sets it off, and little pieces of electricity, little arcs of electricity go across it and cut and burn a completely unique pattern every time. So I got 4 of them. I have no idea where the other 3 are. Oh, wait, there's one over there, but I don't know where the other 2 are. Probably under a piece of furniture somewhere. I want to address another thing right away that you may or may not have noticed, and it's going to become very noticeable as soon as I say it. The lights on my desk, the light bulb burnt out, and I had to replace it with a stronger light bulb. So the lighting is all different. You can see more shadows. It's more dynamic. Okay, in the last video, you saw in the opening, you saw some shelves. Got some stories to tell about that. First you saw a bunch of, on the bottom shelf, you saw a bunch of night head bottles. I collect them. I've kind of been obsessed with them since my freshman year when I found one at my grandfather's house and then gave it away. And I've regretted giving it away, so I've replaced it abundantly. On the next shelf, you may have seen my Edgar Allan Poe action figure. Now, I think all of you are going back to the last video to look for the Edgar Allan Poe action figure because not many people have one and you probably want to see that. But there it is. I also have a small collection of the DC sirens. On the next shelf up, the thing you should notice is under a plastic dome, I have a silver dragon. It's like a swirly Asian dragon. It's made out of foil. It's very rare. It was handmade in a foreign country. A dear friend of mine named Scott picked it up for me, and he sent it to me. And when I got a hold of him later, I said, "This thing is gorgeous. I'm putting it in my office." And he was like, "Oh, I was hoping it would earn a spot in your office." So I wanted to show it all to you. You went up, you saw a couple of collector beer bottles that I have, and then the clip-ins on Shutterfly. Shutterby? Shutterfly? Shutterfly.
Flutterby?
Flutterby. I don't know. One of the My Little Ponies. This is a story you're going to want to hear. So, through a odd set of circumstances, a rumor started going around that I was a brony. If you don't know what that is, it's a grown man who becomes infatuated and obsessed with the My Little Pony universe. It's very common. It's a culture I don't know much about, and I hold no animosity towards. I don't really make fun of them, but I'm not one. And I was talking to a couple of friends. I was in martial arts at the time, and they were all coming down every Sunday to do martial arts in the basement. It was a weekly thing, and I told them about this, and I also had another friend who I had the brony conversation with, and my wife had made a couple of jokes, and even some people at the dojo had made a couple of jokes. So when my wife walked into to my office one day, stopped at the door and went, "Where did that come from?" And on a bookshelf that used to be here sat that My Little Pony statue, which is actually a bank. I was livid. One, somebody had snuck into my office and placed something there. And two, somebody had snuck in my office and placed something there without my permission. Plus, it was the thing. So I yelled at my wife because I thought she was in on it. And she was like, "I know nothing about it. I know nothing about it." And I grilled her on it until she made that face. And then I knew for sure it wasn't her. So I got a hold of one of the guys, took a picture of it, and just said, "Was this you?" And he goes, "No. I know what Little Pony that is, but that's not me. I didn't do this. What's the story?" And I said, "I don't know yet." So then I got a hold of the guys. I went to the chat group that had the guys that were in on the dojo Sunday practice, the living room Sunday practice. And I sent a photo, and I said, "Which one of you bastards did this?" One of them burst out laughing. The other one said, "Well, whatever do you mean?" And so, of course, that's the guy. So, The other was like, oh, I wish I had done this. I wish this was me. I wish I had thought of this. Evidently, he came down to change into his dojo gi a month before. And while he was down here, before we all came down, he put that there and ran. And he had been waiting for a month, a couple days after a month, for the joke to kick in. It was in my office for a month before I noticed it. So there's a lot of people who would tell you that writers are really observant and they watch everybody and they watch different things and, the writer will catch your, that's not always true. Sometimes, most times, writers are locked in their own heads and they don't see things when it's right in front of them. So anyway, that's what I was guilty of. So yeah, I'm gonna take a break, get myself ready because it takes a little bit of preparation to do what I'm about to do. So yeah, I will be back in just a few. Okay, so this is gonna be very emotional for me. The reason we're talking about this is because I simply cannot get my mind off of this issue. I wanted to post something Friday, and I can't get my mind off of this issue, and it's very tied in with my work, and with my past and my life, and my autobiography, and all that stuff. And so it is pertinent, and it shows a very odd thing about my brain, and it shows how brilliant my wife is. So we're going to talk about this. So I am currently working on the next series of books I'm going to put out after the Madness Wars. The Madness Wars is pretty much done. The last book comes out April 15th, 2021, which is like 2 months from now, 3 months from now. And the whole thing's written, edited, it's ready to go. My final editor is looking at it right now. It's in the holster. So I have to put out another book in 6 months, and I have these two series that work very well together. One is called The Burdens of Beasts, and the other one is called The Nation of Five. Now, the first Burdens of Beasts book is fun. It's good, stands on its own, and starts the story. The first of The Nation of Five starts the story and kicks off the major issue for the series. Okay? I will release book one and then book one. Then comes book two. Book two is called The First Tree. And a lot of it takes place in the forest of the First Tree, which is a very famous forest in my world. I have written and hinted at it many, many times, never gone into much detail, and in this book, you finally get to see it. It's a thing to witness. But there's a side story that's being told at the same time. That side story is about a character named Barrick. Barrick is a slave. He's been a slave as long as he can remember. He was bought by a noble and given to his son, who's the same age, as a playmate and a bodyguard. So they grow up together, and they become best friends. But one of them owns the other one, so there's a lot of tension and a lot of, really messed up things that are happening in the relationship. It's a strained relationship. So finally, after one very upsetting scene, the slave decides to run away. And the owner, his best friend, brother, decides to run away with him. They leave the city and they go out into the forest to see a friend that's always lived in the forest, a warrior by the name of Fanhun. Fanhun is actually in Crown. This takes place before that. Fanhun is a ranger, and they are met by the captain of the guard from the city where Beric was a slave. That guy's name is Camero. These guys tell Beric a story. They say that they used to fight in a gladiator arena on the other side of the world. And they met Beric's father there. And Beric's father's name is Gondik Ironspine, which is what the video you're watching is titled. Gondik was a great warrior, and he helped them all escape. He masterminded their escape. He was killed while he was having sex by Beric's mother for something, as revenge for something that he did. And she hated him so much that when his child was born, she sold his child into slavery. She sold her own son into slavery. And that's how Beric ended up where he is. Camero couldn't afford to buy him. Neither could Fanhun. So they put themselves in a place where they would be around Beric all the time so that they could protect him and watch over him. This all becomes very important later, so you're going to want to pay attention. They want to protect their friend's son because he can't raise him. Hold on. They want to protect their friend's son because he can't raise his son himself. So Beric's instantly furious. And he tells them that they're horrible friends of his father and why would they do this and all this kind of stuff. And before he leaves, they give him a map to his father's tomb. They're going to go with him and escort him to his father's tomb. He doesn't want anything to do with that. He doesn't want anything to do with them. He tells them, don't follow me, and he takes off with his friend, who was actually his owner. They go through one thing after the next. It's a book, so there's a plot. And there's a journey. And finally, Beric finds himself before his father's tomb. And he's asking his father what he wants. He says, I'm here. I made it. I don't know you. I don't know me. I don't know what you want from me. He says, tell me what to do. Well, another friend of his father's does come, explains a major quest that will take him out of that series and put him in to the next series. So we got a series hopping character. This is why I'm releasing them in the order that I am. None of that matters right now. None of that matters right now. The only thing that matters right now is I'm doing the rewrites for these books. And when I finished the rewrites for First Tree, I was exhausted. I'd been working for 15 hours, and I was just blasted. And I came upstairs, and my wife asked me how it was. And I started to explain what happens in the book. She's read it, but it was written years ago. I started to explain what happens in the book, and I got really, really emotional when I got to talking about Beric and Gondik. I got really emotional. And I could barely get the words out, quite like right now. I could hardly stand. I kept bending over and almost falling down. I was devastated as I'm recalling the story of this kid who doesn't know his father and who's looking for answers at his father's grave. So my wife is watching all of this, and she starts to ask me a question. And it is a question that has completely rocked my world, and it has devastated everything. I was talking to my wife a minute ago, and I said that I am living now in heaven and hell. That's the best way to describe what I'm going through. It comes with a little backstory. Okay, so I'm back. We got to talk about my autobiography for a minute. There's a character in my autobiography who is my mom's soulmate. Her name we're going to call Rose. His name we're going to go with Bramble. That's what they're named in the books, because in the books everybody has a code name. Nobody's called by their real name. So Rose and Bramble were soulmates. Bramble was part of a crew that my uncle ran with from 6th grade until now. Very tight crew. And he came home with his crew one day while my mom was doing chores, and Bramble just started helping with the chores. It was an instant kind of thing with them. And there is no doubt in my mind that these two people were meant to be together. Bramble was a martial artist. He's a warrior. When he ran with my uncle's crew, when the crew was running around, they would go to a bar, and their favorite game to play was they would pick a fight with another group of guys at the bar. And then they would all go sit down, and Bramble would beat those guys up by himself. All 6 to 8 of those guys would fall to Bramble. I remember when I was 4, going to Bramble's 5th degree black belt test. He was probably 27. The man was a weapon. He was a weapon. He was also a really, really amazing guy. When Rose left Char, my father, when she left Char and she divorced him when I was 4, she immediately got together with Bramble. And they kind of lived together for about 4 or 5 months. He had a place he was staying, but he was at our house a lot. He treated me like gold. I would get up in the morning, he'd be coming home, he'd sit on the couch with me, hold me like this, and we'd watch Saturday morning cartoons together. One time I was sleeping on the couch. I fell asleep on the couch. We kept out hours because my mom had a job she had to get up for at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and she had to drop us off at a babysitter. I was always tired. So I fell asleep on the couch. When I wake up, Bramble's laying behind me, sleeping with me, with his arms around me. He was a good person to have in my life. For some reason, around the age of 5 probably, Bramble woke me up one night. He sat me down and he said, "I'm leaving. Me and your mom are breaking up. Because I want you to have this." And he handed me a small case. The case was about 2 inches by a foot by 9 inches, 10 inches, something like that. Had a handle. I opened it up and it was a pool cue that was broken down into 5 pieces and it all screwed together. Now this man spent a lot of time in bars. I guess he played a lot of pool. This is not a small gift. When Bramble gave me this, he was giving me a big piece of his life. And then he left, and I didn't see him again for a very long time. My aunt died. Circumstances of her death are not important, but she died. And when she did, I went to the funeral. I was living in Missouri, so I came up to Milwaukee, where she lived, and I went to the funeral. And of course, all of my uncle's crew were there, and I got to see Bramble again for the first time. He was really excited to see me, but at the same time, he had this kind of slump to him. He was very upset. I attribute it to the funeral. And he almost looked broken. One of the fiercest, most powerful men I've ever known almost looked like he just couldn't handle being there. So after the funeral, I ended up in a couple of places. One of the places I ended up was a bar that my Uncle Wrath, his friend Sly, Bramble's wife, Bramble, my mom, and my stepdad Mumble were all sitting at. We were sitting at a table. It was one of those round corner booths. And I could see, from where I was standing, I could see Bramble. He was staring at me. He looked, like I said, he looked miserable. He was sitting right next to his soulmate, and they couldn't help but flirt with each other as she's sitting with her husband and he's sitting with his wife. They couldn't help but flirt with each other because, like I said, they're meant to be together. But they couldn't make it work. For a reason I'm going to guess at by the end of this video. That night, I was very upset, and it happened to be the night before my birthday. And as the clock hit 12, I turned 21. I was legal to drink. And my uncle, Sly, and Bramble begged me to drink with them that night. But I was really upset, didn't want to get weepy. And I was, at the time, straight edge, which if you don't know what that means, you should look it up. But I was straight edge, and so I didn't take in any drugs or alcohol. So it went by. I said goodbye. I shook Bramble's hand, and I never saw him again. So my grandma passed away a couple years ago, and I went to the funeral, and Sly was there. He's a very jovial character. He's been described by me and by my cousin as goofy. He's very funny. He's got a great laugh. He's always trying to make people smile. He's trying to make people happy. And even at the funeral, he had it muted, but he was still bringing levity to the situation. So I walked over to him at one point. I'm standing there, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I said, "What do you hear about Bramble?" And his face went instantly serious, more serious than I've ever seen him before. And he said, "Bramble?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I miss him." I said, "Things went bad after he left my life. And I've always kind of wished that Bramble was my father." And I said, "And if you have his number and you don't think he would mind, I'd really like to call him." He immediately pulled out his phone. He told me that I should definitely call Bramble, get a hold of him. He said he wants to talk to you. He's very sick. Sly told me that Bramble was going through multiple system failure and that they had given him, I think, 3 months to live. I told Sly that there was a couple of things that I really wanted to tell him. One, that I was in martial arts. The other was that I was riding a Harley at the time, which Bramble rode a Harley. I wanted to tell him other things too. Things that I had done, ways that I had protected innocent people, that I thought he'd be proud of. Sly handed me a phone number, and he said, definitely call him. And he left. And I didn't really see Sly smile for the rest of the day or laugh for the rest of the day. That's not saying much. I only saw him at the funeral. It's not really a great place to laugh and smile. But there was something different about the way Sly was acting. After that conversation, we're going to back up. We're going to go to my mom. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the way that I grew up. Okay, so this is how the story goes. When Rose, my mother, divorced Char, my father, Char decided he was going to work his children against Rose. So he told us to not listen to her, to break her things, to argue with her, to do everything we could to make her life miserable, so that she would realize she needed a man to discipline us and we could be a family again. This is just a sliver of the kind of monster this man is. Well, I didn't do it. At the time, I was living with Bramble. And Char had beaten me all my life. And Bramble didn't. And I was just happy to be living there. But my sister did. My sister made my mom's life hell. My mom knew why she was doing it. She knew why Les was making her life hell. But she fought her anyway. And this started a war between my mother and my sister that still rages to this day. They hate each other, but they try to love each other. They get together, and they can be together for a weekend. And the first day is fine. Second day, my mom starts complaining that my sister got up in the middle of the night, ate all the food, which she didn't. She starts complaining that my sister's leaving messes everywhere, which she's not. My sister starts saying shitty things to my mom. My mom starts saying shitty things back. These two humans should not be in the same room together. They are at war, and they have been for years beyond count. 40 years, maybe. So, that's what I grew up with. I grew up in the raging war of Les, my sister, and Rose, my mother. I have a brother. He's a half-brother, and in the autobiography, I call him Grasp. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. I'm not going to get into them. That's too dark a road to go down. But I call him Grasp. Grasp was Mumble's son. Rose married Mumble after her and Bramble broke up. And Mumble is not a strong man. And Mumble, turns out, is a deviant. And a sexual predator to teenage girls. It's a monster. But at the time, he was just working all the time and absent. His son was growing up in the house, but he wasn't the topic of much conversation, and he was very easily folded and put in the back corner. But neither of these relationships are anything close to what me and my mom's relationship was like. She was overly involved. Not at first. At first it was sit down and watch this movie with me. Then it was sit here and listen to this album with me. Get up and dance with me. Let's go for a ride. Let's go sneak out and have a dinner. Do you want to go get ice cream? Let's watch some more movies. Let's sit down for hours at a time and talk. My mother showered me with affection, and she showered me with attention. And all the while, she's raging at one daughter and neglecting one son. I became the focus of all of her attention, and I became her closest confidant and her closest friend. And she told me a lot of stories about Bramble. She talked about them all the time. So another thing she did was, anytime she was mad at me, she yelled at me and she told me that I looked just like my father Char, who was abusive in every way that a person can be to a child. She told me that I acted just like him. And over again, she said that I looked just like Char. She compared me to him a lot whenever she was upset. And it filled me with, as you can expect, it filled me with a great sense of self-loathing. Because Char's a monster in every way. He comes from a great line of monsters, all the way back as far as you can reach. That family, my family, has, on my father's side, has been dark. It's a lineage of darkness. And I walk around covered in their muck all the time. I left them, confronted them, I defeated them, and I rose. I changed my name. I married my soulmate. I live a life of happiness and peace and creativity and art. I live with two amazing sons that are both compassionate and powerful. Plus I got all the dogs. So there's that. But always clinging to me is this blackness that I was born to. A darkness that's gripped tight to me all of my life and was reinforced over and over again by my mother. Was reinforced over and over again by Rose. So now we get back to the first tree. My reaction to it was so powerful and so overwhelming that it made my wife think about my past and try to put things together and rearrange things in a different way and make more sense as to why this was affecting me like this. Because I don't know about other writers, but my work speaks to me. I find things about myself in my work. I use my work to teach myself things. I didn't have a great father figure, so I wrote a character named Burl Steeltooth. And Burl is a perfect father. And by writing that perfect father, I learned how to be a father. Things like this happen all the time. My work teaches me. And I believe that it is inspired by a higher power to get me through life and to heal me. It's a belief that the entire family holds. And so when I was sobbing, barely able to talk, as I talked about the first tree, and I talked about him standing in front of his father's grave and asking, "What do you want? What do I do now?" She looked at me. She took me into our bedroom. I sat down on the couch. She told me to brace myself, and then she said, "What is the percentage chance that Bramble is your father?" And of course, at first, it made no sense. I'm the second born child of a marriage between Rose and Char. If I, and she didn't divorce him till I was 4, so if I am Bramble's child, then my mom had an affair, which is just not possible. You gotta understand, my mom projects an image of perfection, an image of a good, solid, holy woman. And she always has. She has an air of, I never messed up. She has an air of purity. And she protects it covetously. At that moment, when my wife asked me that question, I remembered many times talking to my Uncle Wrath. And he would say, your mom's not the saint she wants everybody to believe she is. Your mom's not the saint she pretends to be. So I really started to look at the situation when we started talking. Me and my wife are very analytical when things like this happen. So we started talking about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And we found a couple similarities between me and Bramble. And we were talking about it, and I was just like, I don't know. This is ridiculous. And so I sent a text to a woman who's the mother of 2 characters in my autobiography, Tigress and Lioness. And I said, I want to get it out. I want to get it out. I got my phone right here. I want to get it out because you have to hear how ridiculous I sounded. I sent her this message and it says, is it within the realm of possibility that Bramble and Rose had an affair, let's say, I don't know, 9 months before I was born? She wasted no time in getting back to me. And she said, I do believe they had an affair, but I'm not sure when that was. Well, this opens up so many possibilities. And I really start looking at the things that I've done and who I am. And I start examining my personality and how it clashes so much with Char's family and with Rose's family. The things that I do and the things that I've done that make absolutely no sense to either one of these people. And in fact stands in opposition to the things they believe in. Ways that I have struggled with them for years about the things going on in those families. And I started to recognize the warrior inside of me. It sounds corny when I say it like that. There's a lot of examples of times when a situation was before me and I faced it head on without any fear, or with great fear and dominating that fear. I remember a time when a girl that was an ex of mine was dating somebody else. They're all at church. And I wasn't at church that night. And I got a phone call from this girl that said that her boyfriend had slapped her. And I told her to put the pastor's son on the phone. He was a friend of mine. And I said, come get me. Well, the pastor's son came and got me and asked if I was going to beat his ass in the middle of the chapel. And I said, no. I'm just going to show this man that he's a coward. I got to the church, and of course I was late for youth group, about 5 minutes, 10 minutes late for youth group. As I'm walking up the hall, he's walking down it. And he says, "Oh, great, she called you." And I said, "Yup." He goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to teach you that you're a coward." So after the youth group, all the girls of the church, a very dramatic group, were clinging close to me. I look across the parking lot, and he's there with 4 guys. And he does a taunting gesture. And so I walked away. And I walked up to him. There was a choir of drama behind me as I walked away. I walked past the porch of the church, and the pastor's son was like, "You need me?" And I said, "No, I can handle this." I went and I faced these men, boys. We were all teenagers, big enough to hurt each other. I faced them ready to fight them all. 2 of them were much bigger than me. And I did so with an air of confidence that does not come from Rose's family or Char's family. With an air of confidence and fearlessness that is not in me after being beaten and broken for most of my life. It doesn't make sense why I was there. It doesn't make sense why I was threatening them. It doesn't make sense that I did teach him that day without fighting, that he was a coward. Char's son does not have the ability to do that. Rose's son does not have the ability to do that. So we start thinking about it more and more. The next day, I got a hold of Uncle Wrath. Now, me and this man have fallen out. Like I said, I stand in opposition to his family. I've been engaged in a war with Rose's family for 20 years. I've been demonized, lied about, vilified. I lost all of them. I had to walk out into the world alone, where I found my wife. This man does not like me, and he does not want anything to do with me. My Uncle Wrath. However, Uncle Wrath has a crew. That crew's been together since 6th grade. And Bramble's part of that crew. So I sent nearly the same message that I sent to Tigress and Linus's mother. I sent to Uncle Wrath. I added that I was not interested in that. I said that I knew that Rose and Bramble were soulmates. So did he think there ever was an affair? And I also said, I'm getting a DNA test. And then I don't want to bring drama to Bramble's widow. Because from what we know, or what we've been told, Bramble died in October of 2020. I missed it. I didn't call him. I didn't call him because I knew he was sick. I knew he was failing. His body was failing him. And I knew that by the end of that conversation, what I was going to say is I was going to say that I always wished he was my father. I knew I was going to say that. And I also knew that he loved me. And I didn't want those words to haunt him for the small amount of time he had left. So I didn't call him. And now he's gone. Well, Uncle Wrath got back to me. He said he never heard of an affair. And then he said a DNA test might be a good idea. It's coming from a man who hates me, who would never invite me into his crew. Ever. But he couldn't help himself. He couldn't help himself. So we kept looking. I found a picture of Char last night. And this is the man I'm supposed to look like. I showed him to my son, and he couldn't see anything in it. Char has the wrong nose, the wrong eyes, the wrong eyebrows, the wrong facial structure. His face is pinched together. His forehead is bigger than mine. His lips are wrong. His chin is wrong. His entire bone structure in his face is petite. He's got black hair. My hair's always been brown. And as I looked at this picture, as my wife looked at this picture, as my son looked at this picture, in the back of my mind, I heard echoing my mother's words. You look so much like Char right now. You remind me so much of him. You have the same qualities as your father. I could feel every lash when she compared me over and over again to the man that had abused me so terribly. And I remembered every single time that she told me I looked just like him. So we started looking for Bramble online. We searched everywhere. We looked everywhere. And we found a picture of his brother. And it was remarkable how much I looked like Bramble's brother. It was remarkable the resemblance that I found. So I came down here to work at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's 5 in the afternoon now. I've been up all this time. You guys know why that is. And you also know, if you've been watching this channel, that I'm about done. My body's about to start breaking down. I'm about to lose it. But this story has to be told, and I have to tell it now. I came down at 2 after putting my wife to bed, turning off the light, kissing her goodnight, and coming down here. I thought that was the end of her evening. But this has become our life the last couple of days. And so she couldn't sleep. She picked up the phone and she started looking around, finding names, tracing these names back. The name of Bramble's father, possible family pictures. And she found a picture on this site that sells old-timey pictures. It's a picture from the 50s. It's got Bramble's father, and he's holding up a portrait, a big portrait of his 2 sons, his 2 youngest sons. Poor quality, terrible quality. Becca looked at it. I didn't look like Bramble's father. And you can't make out much of the pictures of the kids at all. So it's a dead end. She tells me about it in the morning. I want to see it. And I look at this picture and something stands out immediately. Instantly, something stands out. Bramble is about 4 in the picture, and he's wearing a dark shirt with long sleeves and a very distinctive brownish, orangish vest with stripes. And I found a picture from the time when I lived with Bramble where I was wearing that exact outfit. From what I can see, that outfit that I wore was a hand-me-down from Bramble's past. I've never heard of a man moving in with another woman's kids and dressing that kid in the same clothes that he wore when he was a child. I've never heard of that. I stare at those pictures and it brings questions and it brings answers. It brings confusion and it brings pain. So I was working on the next book last night, and I got to this part where Barrick has found a collection of his people, and the men in his culture brand themselves with the symbol of their family as a way to test their ability to take pain, because they think pain is life, and if you are man enough to take pain without wincing, pulling away, or screaming, then you have passed your manhood trial. When the metal is pressed into Barrick's chest, he has a vision. He has a vision of a great battle that took place on his tundra homeland. This great battle that his family, his clan was fighting. And he starts to look up like this, and I mean, this is his family's history. He starts to look up and away, and he hears a voice behind him of a man that says, "No, son, look, watch, witness." And Barrick knows his father's behind him. And he says, "Father, can't I turn around?" And Gondik Ironspine says to Barrick Ironspine, "Not yet." Well, that's where I'm at. That scene right there is where I'm at. Again, my work is talking to me. Words I wrote years ago come back to me at the moment that I need them. Because I'm looking at the history of a people, and all I want to do is turn around and look at my father. But I have to wait. I have to wait for a DNA package to come to my house. I've got to follow their instructions, mail it back to them, and they promise results in 8 weeks. So I can't turn around. I can't turn around for 8 weeks. We have to think about what all this means when it comes to my mother Rose. She divorced Jar, and he got visitation rights every Saturday. And she sent us to his house between like 8 o'clock until like 8 o'clock. on every Saturday. He's pretty much a deadbeat, so most of the time he canceled on us. But yeah, that. It was during those visitations that I was abused so terribly. I remember the last time I talked to my mother, we were trying to patch things up. I told her that I needed to talk a little bit about the abuse that I suffered. And before I started, she started talking to me and she said, listen, she goes, I remember one time when you came home and from visiting Char, and I was giving you a bath. And I noticed you had bruises on your legs, and I asked you where you got them. She said, and I remember you looking at me and saying, Daddy beat me with a snow shovel today. And that's the moment. Do you see it? Can you see it yet? Can you see the damnation? If it turns out that Bramble is my father, and she found bruises on me, and she heard me saying that Char had beat me with a snow shovel, then why did she put me in his car at 8 o'clock on the next Saturday morning? Why couldn't she tell me that I didn't have to go visit that man because he wasn't my father? Why did she put me in his house every week to be more and more horrifically abused when all she had to do was admit to the fact that she had an affair and give me to a father that would have loved me? If this is true, then it means that my mother stole a loving father from me and fed me to a monster and tied me to a monster's lineage. I I hope you can see that I can only answer that with wrath, with hate. My work is talking to me. And every time I sit down to edit the new books that are coming out after the Madness Wars, I learn more and more about the story of my lineage. And every time, more and more, my work is guiding me to an understanding that takes me away from a lineage of darkness and brings me to the grave of my father to say, I'm here. I don't know you. I don't know me. I don't know what you want from me. But I made it here. And that is the tale of Gondik Ironspine and Barak Ironspine. And that is the tale of Jesse and Bramble. And the fact is, I'm living right now a life of hope that this man is my father. and I'm living a life of hell because it'll be so long before I know. And all we can do is gather little clues, like hand-me-down outfits and uncles with my face.